Hey there, I'm Alex Kidman. This is the Galaxy Z Flip6. Let's get into the review. So over the years, Samsung absolutely has been a leader in the foldable phone space. There's just no doubting or challenging that. Its latest effort is the Galaxy Z Flip6, and I've been putting it through its paces, and in a lot of ways, it's an impressive improvement on what they've done before, but it still leaves me wanting, and it feels kind of weird that that's the case. On so many levels, it should tick every box I'm looking for in a foldable flip phone. It sports an elegant design, the battery life is decent, and the processor absolutely is the fastest you can get on any flip phone right now, probably any flip phone this year. However, coming at it just after testing the Motorola Razr 50 Ultra, which is cheaper and critically has a larger and better, more capable external display, I'm left with the impression that Samsung's kind of rested on its laurels with this one. And it leaves me with a phone that's less than it should be for the price that Samsung wants for it. The camera's not massively improved. It is better, but it's not as improved as a camera at this price point should be. The cover display especially is problematic. There's a lot to like about this phone, and actually in any other context, it would be the flip phone that I'd recommend, but I just can't. Let's get into why that is by first talking about the design. Look, honestly, the underlying design of the Galaxy Z Flip6 hasn't actually changed all that much from last year's iteration. On the inside, you've got your 6.7-inch, 120Hz capable AMOLED display, 2640 by 1080 resolution, all quite good. The crease has been a little bit flattened this year as per Samsung, and yeah, I believe them. Year on year, that's getting better with foldable phones. It's still noticeable, you're still going to pick it, but it's less of a problem than it used to be, I think. On the outside, you've got a 3.4-inch 720 by 748 pixel screen, essentially the same as last year's screen. Now, where Samsung has mixed it up in design terms is the inclusion of a hardened aluminium frame. This feels really solid in the hand, and it's also kind of elegant. Where the Razr 50 Ultra is a little bit more rounded, feels a little bit more soft, this feels a bit more solid, a bit more business-like almost. I quite like it. It's definitely distinct, it's definitely different. Samsung also steps up to the Razr 50 Ultra in terms of colour choices. Here in Australia, we've only got 3 Razr 50 Ultra colour choices, but we've actually got 7 Galaxy Z Flip6 ones. So anywhere you want to buy the Galaxy Z Flip6 will sell you a blue, yellow, mint, or silver shadow one. If you want crafted black, white, or peach, you can only get them through Samsung's online stores or physical stores here in Australia, and there's only a handful of those. Samsung sent me the blue one. I'm a noted sucker for blue phones. I quite like the look of this thing, and it's actually got quite a lot of quite funky cases that you can put on this thing as well, and I'm a big fan of cases, as I think everyone who views this channel knows. There's no sign, however, of the bespoke options that we got a couple of generations ago. That's where you could kind of mix and match colours and make your own custom crafted Z Flip, but to be fair, that wasn't actually a thing that Samsung offered for the Z Flip 5 either, so I'm guessing that's an idea that's just dead in the water. The physical design of the Galaxy Z Flip6 isn't just aesthetically pleasing, but it's also more durable than its predecessor. And look, I didn't have a whole array of Flip 6 phones to explicitly drop test, and I don't favour that kind of testing without proper scientific process. I've done a whole video on this, which I will link above, about how so many of those phone destruction tests you see are just destruction porn. They're not really scientifically testing what they say they're testing, but I digress. You've got Corning Gorilla Glass Victus 2 on that front display, which should certainly help. But what really excites me about the Galaxy Z Flip 6 is that Samsung's finally shifted away from IPX8, which it's had for the last couple of generations of its flip and fold phones, to IP48. Now, what does that mean? Well, it means it's got water resistance such that it should survive a drop into water, but it's also got a rated level of dust resistance. Now, the 4 in IP48 isn't super high. It's basically small objects, insects, bits of grit, that kind of thing. Not so much dust or sand or pieces like that. Obviously, there's still work to do here, but comparatively, again, the Razr 50 Ultra is IPX8, which is what the Galaxy Z Flip 5 was. And if you've watched my Razr 50 Ultra review, you'll know that I feel like that's a bit of a step back for the Razr. It's a step up, though, for the Z Flip 6. In design terms, I actually think outside of the cover display, and I'm going to talk about the cover display in some depth a little later, I think this is an upgrade. On the camera front, look, it's long annoyed me that for the price you pay for one of these flagship flip folding phones, you definitely do not get the best cameras that can be made this year, and that's still true here. And look, Samsung has made some moves to improve the camera setup on the Galaxy Z Flip 6. So it's bounced up the primary wide lens to 50 megapixel, the ultra wide stays at 12, and the selfie stays at 10. And that's not nothing, but it's a big step for what you could get if you spent the same kind of money on an S24 Ultra, for example. And of course, it also sits in fairly stark contrast, again, and I'm going to come back to this point a lot, with what Motorola's done with the Razr 50 Ultra, because their Motorola jumped to telephoto 2 times as opposed to ultra wide, and here Samsung stuck to its knitting and said, no, ultra wide is what you want. Now, yes, it does come down to that question of what do you personally want? What kind of photos do you personally take? I favour the telephoto over the ultra-wide, but some people do like that ultra-wide style for some of their shots, or they just do lots of landscape photography, I suppose. The lack of zoom here does mean that you're playing purely with digital cropping, and Samsung doesn't even put an obvious digital crop button on the camera UI to make you think that there might be a zoom here. It only goes up to 10 times, which is fairly sensible, and even at 10 times, yeah, it starts to get pretty poor. Generally speaking, this is a decent camera, of course. It's not a bad camera. It's just, I find it hard to say that this is a value for money camera because you can get shots this good out of a much, much cheaper phone. And of course, some of that does come down to the engineering needed for the flip phone and where they're going to put the lenses and how those things are going to work. But I could want for better here, I suppose, in terms of general photo output. But of course, that's not the whole story here, because I can't ignore the fact that this is also a Galaxy AI phone. And this is Samsung's big push this year for its phones, and especially for the camera features of this phone. And amongst the Galaxy AI camera features, you get things like object removal, which is more or less Samsung's version of Pixel's Magic Eraser, and also the ability to sketch out items for the Galaxy AI to add to pictures. So how well does this work? Well, look, here's a simple, rather dull shot of a shelf in my office. It's taken with the Galaxy Z Flip 6. It's this pixelated, by the way, because it's a 10 times zoom, but that's actually not what I'm really trying to show off here. Now, I'll try and demo this here live, although I might speed it up a little bit because the processing does take a little while. Now, you might have gathered from some of my other videos that I like cats. I'm not very good at drawing them, but I like cats. So let's draw a cat in here and then tell the phone, right, please put a cat into my photo. One not so quick sprinkling of Galaxy AI later, and we have a cat. Okay, yeah, that's a cat. Now, one thing that took me a little while to work out is that it was only ever giving me white cats, and that's because I was drawing with the white pencil. If you want different coloured cats or different coloured whatever it is you're trying to draw, you have to change the pencil colour. That threw me for a while. I was thinking, can this only do white cats? But it does have problems with things like scaling, and it does have problems with things like producing AI monstrosities like this poor moggy in my backyard. That's not so good, really. One of the other features it has is AI Portrait Studio, and this lets you take a selfie and then render yourself as different kind of cartoon and watercolor and sketch styles. And we've seen a few takes on this kind of idea over the years, but this one's meant to be, specifically AI-led and very smart and very good. So let's start with this selfie of, well, me, and see what it generates out. Well, first of all, I got this guy. This guy looks like he wants me to invest in his dodgy crypto scheme, really. Okay, but you do get choices. Then there's this guy who, well, I guess that's what happens if you merge me and Claudio Castagnoli, perhaps? I don't even know who this guy is. These are all genuine, legit things it's done with my selfie, and that's just, like, it's very Ryan Reynolds in a way, but it's not me. This one incorporates bits of the actual photo into the design, and it's just terrifying. That's real Uncanny Valley stuff. Though I will admit, I do kind of like this sketch of me. It's not really new, and my daughter, who does a lot of drawing, pointed out to me that sometimes these AI-led things try to incorporate styles and brushes that aren't exactly congruent with each other, and I think she's right here. But this, at least, I like. This is the one shot that Portrait Studios made where I thought, yeah, actually, that's not too bad. On the processing side, the Galaxy Z Flip6 is built around the Qualcomm Snapdragon 8 Gen 3 4 Galaxy processor. And Samsung's claim here has long been that its Galaxy processors, its specifically fine-tuned Qualcomms basically, are better than the rest. You get 12 gig of RAM along with that, and then either 256 gig or 512 gig of onboard storage. Like all of Samsung's foldables forever, there's no micro SD expansion, sadly. And look, the simple truth here is it's rather easily the most powerful combination you can get in a flip foldable right now, and maybe for the rest of the year, though we will have to see what the likes of Google or Oppo might be hiding in their labs. I think this is probably going to be it. And look, I can most clearly show this in Geekbench 6's CPU test, where the Galaxy Z Flip 6 beats all comers. And yes, there is a performance gap there, a very obvious one, between it and the Razer 50 Ultra. It's a little bit less clear if we jump over to the GPU, where it runs second fiddle to the Galaxy Z Fold 5's GPU in 3D Mark's Wildlife Extreme test. I haven't tested the Z Fold 6 yet, and I'll be very keen to see how that one stacks up. But any way you slice it, this is a powerful Android phone. And of course, it's a powerful Android phone that benefits from the fact that Samsung's committed to 7 years of OS and security updates for it. I really do like that. I know, and I've had some feedback from people saying, oh, but that doesn't really matter. People change their phones every 3 years. It's irrelevant. I don't think it is. A lot of people do still hold their phones. And if you're going to spend this much on a phone, you want to get as long out of it as possible. And also, even if you do change out your phones, you're probably going to get a lot more for a phone that people go, hey, I can keep this one up to date, than you are for one that's already out of date. That processing power is also put into select Galaxy AI features, like all the photo editing features, as well as an inbuilt interpreter translation app that can use the external folded display to show both sides of a conversation at once. And look, it works, but not particularly quickly in my own tests with Japanese to English and back and forth. And with the usual caveats around AI language translation, it does sometimes deliver some truly weird results. Usually not something that's going to get you punched in the face or shot, but maybe something that might confuse or make a server laugh because it's so silly, really. It'll break the ice, I guess, and you will be able to generally get your point across. But I'm still not 100% sold here. Essentially speaking, this stuff works, but it doesn't seem to be any better for being on device partially, and it's still kind of clunky. There's work that needs to be done. We're in the early days of this stuff, I feel. So with all of that in mind, why am I still not entirely on board with Z Flip 6? I mean, it's fast, it's powerful, it's got Galaxy AI, the design's pretty good. Well, nearly all of it comes down to this cover display. And the fact that it's still a 3.4-inch, relatively low-resolution display, but this isn't just a size and resolution game. It's not just about that. It's actually to do with what Samsung wants you or doesn't want you to do with the cover display. And explicitly, this is about apps. So there's plenty of widgets, and you can do like custom wallpapers and stuff, and that's all very cute. But by default, this thing won't run apps on its external display, and comparatively, the Razer 50 Ultra, which is also cheaper, will on a larger display. And look, I know there's going to be some of you screaming into your screens right now, oh, but Alex, you're wrong, you can. And yeah, look, sure, there is an experimental labs feature that lets you run apps on the main screen, but it's limited to a handful of apps that even Samsung itself admits might not work properly. This is not, you can run all apps on the cover screen. And of course, there is also another alternative you might want to bring up. There's an app called Good Lock. It lets you run any app you like. They're exactly the same. They're not. They're absolutely not, and that's on a couple of different levels. So yes, Good Lock does let you brute force your way in. By the way, and this is a little bit of a digression, I keep seeing online people saying, oh, this is a Samsung app. This is an app out of Samsung. I don't think it is. I can find no evidence that Good Lock, which comes out of a company called Good Lock Labs, is a Samsung actual developed product. And I've got two reasons for this. Yes, it's available through the Galaxy App Store. So what? Lots of third-party apps are available through the Galaxy App Store. It's not Samsung branded the way the Samsung apps in the Galaxy App Store are. That's a big red flag, obviously. But moreover, if Samsung developed this in-house, if they wanted this functionality in there, then why not just bake it into One UI? It really genuinely makes no sense whatsoever. You could just have it as a toggle, allow apps on the external screen, don't allow apps on the external screen, but they don't. And that does make me worry about the long-term viability. Obviously, future updates could break Good Lock. But also, Good Lock is just kind of kludgy in a way that the approach that Motorola's taken with the Razr 50 Ultra isn't. Some apps just do not work, and yes, that's true for Motorola as well to an extent, but usually that's to do with the size of windows or the size of buttons. I've just had some things not run at all through Good Lock. And also, of course, having that smaller screen and smaller resolution means that they're just a great deal less satisfying. Now, I said this in my Motorola review as well, and I suppose it's true here too. If you wanted that distraction-free lifestyle, if you only want the cover display because you just want your basic notifications and you never want to do other things on it, or you never want to do large-scale things on it, because it is still a workable screen, then yes, maybe that's a plus, but it feels like a limitation, and a limitation that one of Samsung's competitors is handling a lot more elegantly right now. On the battery front, the Z Flip6 features a 4,000 mAh sealed battery, which means it does improve on its predecessor, which had 3,700 mAh. Nice little bump up there. And of course, that means it keeps pace in terms of battery capacity with the Motorola Razr 50 Ultra. Flip phones have always had slightly smaller batteries than their regular Android counterparts, and that's a natural enough consequence of having to split the phone in half with a hinge. So any kind of battery you're going to throw in there, it's going to be smaller, there's less space, it's going to be split in half. There's compromises that have been made, but the numbers on the battery capacity don't interest me as much as what it can actually do and how it compares to other foldable phones in terms of battery endurance. So to test that out first, I ran it through my standard YouTube battery test. So that's a 1080p looping video for an hour, maximum brightness, moderate volume, to see how long it runs down. Now, anything that falls under 90% here, that's a big problem for all-day battery life. Most phones these days tend to bounce above that. And, to be fair to the Galaxy Z Flip6, yes, it did that. It dropped down to 95% in my test. That's actually a little bit better than the Z Flip 5 did too. So there's improvement there. This is all good, right? Well, yes and no, because again, I think you really should compare this against the Razr 50 Ultra. And in the same test, that managed 99%. So it's still beating out here. And that's actually been the story for a while with Motorola's foldable phones. I've found their battery endurance is just that bit better than Samsung manages. This isn't bad, but again, you can do better. And if you can do better, why wouldn't you? And look, those figures actually played through as I've been testing this out in terms of day-to-day usage. For most people, yes, you'll be able to get through a day with this phone on moderate usage without too many problems. Like any phone, hammer it hard with the apps and you're going to send it flat. That's the nature of every single phone. There's no charger in the box. That's been a standard for Samsung for some time now for its flagship phones. So when it comes time to charging, you'll need a USB-C power adapter. It can charge it up to 25 watts for wired charging or via Qi. Annoyingly, no Qi 2 as yet. I'm still waiting for a Qi 2 Android phone. You can also do reverse wireless charging through that, although with only 4,000 mAh to play with, it's not something I think a lot of people are going to use an awful lot of the time. So should you buy the Galaxy Z Flip 6? Well, look, technically, this is a great smartphone. The build quality is superb, it's got the best dust resistance of any flip phone you can buy right now, and its processor is second to none. However, it is more expensive than its competition. Its battery life is lower than its competition. And critically for me, the utility of its external display is compromised. That's both because of its smaller, lower resolution screen and Samsung's decisions around Android app behavior on that screen. And look, this somewhat mimics the case I hit last year where I had to pit the Razr 40 Ultra against the Galaxy Z Flip6, and there I ended up still preferring the Razr, but with the notable qualification that the Z Flip5 was a much more powerful phone. There was a much bigger gap in performance between what the Z Flip5 and the Razr 40 Ultra had. Now, there's a performance margin between the Z Flip6 and the Razr 50 Ultra too if you look at benchmarks, but in day-to-day usage, I don't think too many people are really going to notice that. You could throw the same apps at both phones, and generally speaking, Android can be a quirky beast at times, but generally speaking, they're going to run almost identically because both of these phones have really supercar-level processors in them, more than enough power for the way people use most apps. And as such, look, as a flip phone in a standalone sense, you certainly wouldn't be disappointed if you ended up with a Galaxy Z Flip6. But in a wider comparative market, the flip phone that I'd be buying first, if it was me, would be the Motorola Razr 50 Ultra. So that's my take on the Samsung Galaxy Z Flip6. What do you think? Got some opinions? Got any comments on the review? Let me know in the comments below, and as always, thanks for watching, and don't forget to hit like and subscribe. Thank you.